part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
The 1-1 pitch. A swing and a drive to deep right. Away back. Goal!
Hi, everybody, and great to have you on board with us. It is the Guardians of the Land MLB Podcast right here on the Press Play Podcast Network. John Telich, your host. Been having a lot of fun this year. I've had some outstanding guests on the show, from the great Andre Knott to Sandy Alomar Jr. And let's bring in right now this week's guest. And real pleasure for me because we go back a long, long way. The TV voice of your Guardians on Valley Sports Ohio is none other than our good man, Mr. Matt Underwood. Matt, how you doing, buddy? What's going on, my friend?
Great. I'm great, JT. It's great to be with you. And you're right, we do go back a long ways. All the way back to Ashland, Ohio, I might.
Yeah. You are an Ashland arrow. You went to Baldwin Wallace College, and that's where, as we say, you matriculated. You learned some of the ropes there, but you dove right in, Matt, to your professional career in Cleveland, Ohio, which is somewhat unique.
Yeah, and I find it difficult a lot of times when I get young people asking me, "Hey, what's some career advice?" Because my career is so outside the norm. Unlike you, I didn't go to a small market. I didn't work my way back. I started at Channel 5 because some serendipitous moments that just kind of fell my way, and I've never worked in another market. So it is very unique in that regard.
It really is. And let's get a little bit more detail to that then we'll jump forward to what's going on with the Guards right now. You went to BW, as you mentioned, and you were roommates with Bernie Kosar's younger brother, or what was the scenario there?
Yeah, so I went to Baldwin Wallace primarily, JT, because I wanted to keep playing football. That was really my first passion in life. I love football. I was a starting quarterback in 7th grade, all the way through my senior year in high school. And I wanted to keep playing. So I went to Baldwin Wallace, which for the uninitiated is a Division III school. So there are no scholarships. And I'll never forget walking onto campus my first day of two-a-days with 6 freshman quarterbacks who were in the same position, in addition to the 6 quarterbacks that were already on the varsity roster. So right away, it was an eye-opening experience. And after 2 years, I decided to transition to the radio booth. We had a campus radio station. It was all run by students. So it was fairly easy to get the opportunity because there was an opening. And it was easy for me because I knew the playbook, I knew the players, I knew the coaching staff, I had heard their speeches. So from that regard, it was simple. I had always had this interest in announcing games because it goes back to when I was a kid. Sitting with my dad on Sunday afternoons watching NFL football. And, I would hear Kurt Gowdy and I knew this was a big game. I was drawn in when the announcers would get serious, when you knew the game was important. You could feel the tone in their voice change and then the atmosphere change. And I wanted to be in that arena. So, when I started doing games at Baldwin Wallace, it was just a lot of fun. And I never really was thinking about this as a vocation. It was just something to do while I was in college. And then my senior year, one of those first moments of serendipity occurred where we had a guy who would come to our station and help us out. He was a professional. Chuck Steckman was his name. Chuck was a production assistant at 3WE. And his job at that time, one of the things he did was he helped Nev Chandler put together the coaches show. He said to me, "Hey, do you have a demo tape that I could give to Nev so maybe he can give you some pointers?" This is how uninitiated I was. I'm like, "What's a demo tape?" I had no idea what that even was. And so he said, pull some of your highlights. So I got the big reel-to-reels, put them on the machine, and I'm trying to pull out little snippets of highlights and touchdowns and things of that nature. And I'm thinking he's going to give this tape to Nev, and Nev was going to go, "Yeah, thanks," throw it in the back seat, and that would be the end of it. And like 2 days later, Chuck called and said, "Hey, Nev's going to be in Berea to do his work with the Browns." And they practiced right on our campus, as you know, back then. So he literally walked across the street and met me in the student union. We sat down at a conference table, and he had his little tape recorder, and he hit play. And it was one of the most cringeworthy moments of my life because I'm sure, just like you, none of us like the sound of our own voice. And when you hear it on Well, when I heard it on tape, I'm like, oh my God, he's going to get up and walk out of the room because this just sounds so bad. And he hit pause and he said, you have sort of a nasal quality about you, and it's just like mine. It blew me away. It was like, oh, so maybe it's okay that I don't sound like Vin Scully or Jack Buck or any of those other announcers that I had listened to as a kid.
Yeah, they're the
And
greats.
he gave me some pointers. One of the things that I remember, because remember Nev learned at the elbow of Joe Tate,
Yeah.
and Joe was a stickler for things like you can call it the lane, you can call it the paint. Remember, it's still the key. You can say pay dirt. Remember, it's still the end zone. And he says, remember those things as you're going along. It was great, constructive criticism and great advice. And so then he dropped the question. He's like, have you ever thought about an internship? I got to be honest. I thought interns were only doctors. I thought that was a medical thing. What is an internship? I had no idea that was a thing that you could go into a TV station.
Yeah.
Experience all of that. And so I applied again. Back then there was Channel 3, Channel 5, Channel 8. Highly competitive. I'm thinking, I'm nobody from I have no shot at this. And like 2 weeks later, right before winter break of my senior year, I get a letter from Linda Dukes Campbell. You've been accepted as an intern at Channel 5 for the winter quarter. So now I'm excited. I do this internship with Nev. It was fantastic. It was Monday through Friday, 4 to midnight, 40 hours a week. I did it for like 8 to 10 weeks. Had a ball. I mean, the minute I walked into that environment, the chaotic, frenetic pace of a newsroom and everything that goes into the deadline, I loved it. It reminded me of being under center in high school with the pace of play and everything's flying around and you've got to maintain your calm and your focus. I loved it. I knew I wanted to be there. So the internship ends. I go back to college, and now I'm like, well, now what do I do? I have this experience, and that's it. I've never been on camera. I have my little radio cassette tape, but that's it. Now, how do I parlay that into a job in this industry? Because as you know, you don't just apply for an entry-level position. It's very competitive. It's very difficult. So I'm sitting there like the last 8 weeks of college, my stomach was doing flip-flops because I didn't know what to do and how to proceed. And literally, John, I can't make this up. 2 weeks before graduation, I get a call in my front at VW from Nev. And he said, hey, they're going to restructure the department, the sports department, and there's going to be an opening here. He said, it's not a lot of money, but he said, you're in. And the only thing I took from that conversation was, if you think you're going to go get a marketing job or an advertising job and leapfrog back into TV, it's probably not going to happen. This is a way to get in, and then what happens, happens.
Yeah, that's your path.
So, good news, bad news. I call mom and dad. I'm like, hey, I got a job. Great. It's $5 an hour and they're going to cap it at 20 hours a week. So do the math. It wasn't enough to live on. So it was very humbling. I had to move back home. All my friends get jobs. They're moving on with their lives. I'm living at home. I'm commuting from Ashland to Cleveland 3-4 times a week. But I was on the inside. I was learning. I was gaining experience. But it was a very long, methodical, and slow process at which there were many crossroads where I thought, am I in the right place? Is this ever going to happen? I would start to build my resume tape. I'd go out to Browns camp. I'd ask the cameraman, hey, could I do a stand-up for my resume tape?
Okay. Oh, sure.
Let me set up the camera. Go ahead. You're never going to make it. You got no chance. So I built my little resume, and then I started sending it out all over the country: Salem, Oregon, Mississippi, Alabama, Youngstown, Steubenville, wherever there was a job opening. I got some of the nicest thank you, but no thank you letters that you can imagine. After 2 years, I was pretty frustrated, and I thought, well, I've given it a shot. It's not going to happen.
Right.
So I went to Archway, the cookie company, whose main
base. Oh yeah, right there in Ashland. Yes,
Ashland, Ohio. I had worked a summer there when I was in college. I went to the guy who ran the bakery, Tom Seddon, lovely man.
Euclid guy.
I literally went with hat in hand and said, Tom, this isn't happening for me. I need a job. I'll deliver cookies. I'll work in the back, anything. I just need a job. I need to make a living and get out on my own. He looked at me. It was another one of those crossroads moments. And he said, I think you need to give it more time.
Wow.
And I didn't hear that. What I heard was, no, get out of my office.
Oh, okay.
And so I sat in the car in the parking lot And I just was like, it was the lowest moment I think I'd ever been. And I thought, man, I was basically begging that guy for a job and he turned me down. And then I had one of those moments where I said, hey, dummy, what he told you was draw on all that experience you gained as an athlete. You don't quit now. You
Yeah.
go forward, you keep working at it. Don't give up. And so I kind of recommitted, went back to Channel 5. And John, again, it's one of those.
That word serendipity.
2 weeks later, Nev comes to me in the sports department. He said, hey, I just got a call from WVIZ. Mike Massa's partner, Brian Powers, I think had retired. He needs a partner for the high school game of the week. I recommended you. And I'm like, wow. And as know, back then, talking 1992, that was a big deal. The high school game of the week on VIZ aired on Friday nights. A lot of
I used to do that as well with the great Mike Massa. Yes.
Yeah. And that was one of those, okay, now I'm on camera. Now I'm doing it. This is for real. And it was just one of those things. The ball kept rolling. That next summer, Kenny Rhoda, Baldwin Wallace, alum. He had graduated before I got there, but I got to know him while I was in school. He calls me from K&R. There's an opening here. They're looking for a 2020 ticker guy. Get your tape in. Took my tape. I did an audition. I got the job on a temporary basis. Nothing given to you. You got to earn it. Let's see if this kid's any good. The ball just kept rolling, and it just kept rolling. But all of those little moments, where you're wondering, am I on the right path? Is this ever going to happen? Right. And the universe just gives you these little breadcrumbs. Just keep going. Just keep going.
Yeah, it's remarkable, the ride, but yet it was unique in many ways, Matt, because as you alluded earlier, I had to go down to South Dakota and Iowa and Buffalo and what have you. Those were great experiences, and they made me what I am today. And all those near walking out of the businesses moments that you had sitting in your car outside of Archway Cookies in Ashland, Ohio, all those things kind of contributed to you having the resolve to keep with it, to getting to be at Channel 5, to move up the ranks there, to one day be the sports director, then to be in a position, 2000, that you get an opportunity to first do radio with the then Indians, now Guardians. And then, you've been the television voice for many, many years. It's kind of hard to fathom in some ways how things work out, especially in your hometown, right?
Yeah. And that's the crazy thing about it, is that when I got the job at Channel 5, and again, that's another story that I would probably bore people with it, but when I finally was named the sports anchor, the Monday through Friday main job, I thought, okay, this is the job, this is it. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life, hopefully, and retire and live happily ever after. And what happened is from 1997 to 2000, I saw the business change drastically and rapidly. I saw the shift from on air to online. The role of the sportscaster was shrinking, getting smaller and smaller. And I realized, maybe this is a time to move. I always wanted to be in the arena. I wanted to be in the game. And again, one of those serendipitous moments, Dave Nelson decided to go back to coaching. There was an opening on the radio network for the Indians. And I decided why not? I'd done the pregame show for them for several years, so they were familiar with me. I had done a few games filling in on TV and on radio, so they had heard my play-by-play. And I thought, let's go for it. Let's go for it. And fortunately, they decided to give me a shot. And 6-7 years with Tom Hamilton, and then transitioned over to the TV side. And I've been fortunate to work with Rick Manning and now Andre Knott, and it's been so fulfilling, so rewarding, so much fun. And as Nev used to say, it beats working for a living.
We all used to joke in that manner, and truer words were never spoken, Matt. The fact that we get to do what we've always dreamed of being able to do, and you've done it from many sides. Whether it was being a producer, then on air, being a reporter, then you're doing radio work, then you're the main sports anchor at a TV station, but you still want to be out there, like Jimmy Donovan gets a chance to still anchors over at Channel 3, but he's the voice of the Browns on the radio. And so all those iterations of Matt Underwood get us to this point in time. But there's people that played huge parts. You said Nev's name quite a few times. Let me get your impressions before we go away to a quick break here. what overall influence did that man, who, by the way, folks, next year in 2024, he will have been gone 30 years. It's so hard to fathom that that man who's been away from us for so long passed away. What kind of a influence on his career, and where does he rank among the great play-by-play people in this town, in your estimation, Matt?
For me, he's number one. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously there's some bias there because I worked so closely with him and got to
Yep.
learn and know so much about the craft from him. I remember so many of the fun moments between the 6 and 11 o'clock shows when I was interning. That was great, as you know, at impersonations. And so when we had those kind of slow times, he would start doing impersonations, and I would try to mimic and do it back, and we just had so much fun. But I could see the switch flip when it was time to put the show together. He hunkered down over that typewriter and banged on those typewriter keys. And God forbid the phone rings and I wasn't there to answer it, because if he had to answer the phone and interrupt his thought process,
Oh boy.
you would have thought the roof was caving in. He could be very volatile in those moments, but that's how he ratcheted up his intensity to get the job done. So I learned that from him. I also learned, he was just, look, Nev went to Northwestern and it was a journalism major.
Yeah.
So he was soup to nuts about it. I was learning on the fly because I had majored in business. I had tinkered with play-by-play in college, but I never really learned the ins and outs, the ABCs of journalism and all of that goes with it. So I was learning on the fly, trying to pick up nuggets from Nev as I was going through it. And I learned, who, what, when, where, all the important things. You can be flowery, you can be fun, you can have catchy catchphrases, but you have to get the basics down. The audience needs to know what happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I learned all of those things and Nev had a presence about him too. He could walk into a room and everybody stopped and they wanted to hear what Nev had to say. And the producers would tell me, I can show you the research. When a big story happens in sports, at
Cool.
6:20, the numbers go up at Channel 5 because people knew Nev was going to give them the story. He was going to get it right. He was going to have the intel. So I learned so much from him, and he was such a kind person to me when he didn't have to be. And he didn't know me that was the other thing, John. Growing up in Ashland, Ohio, I didn't know anybody. I knew of you because you had gone to school there. I knew you were there. And I remember you sent me a great encouraging letter at one time when I was at one of those low points, wondering if I'd ever get a break. And that meant the world to me. But I didn't know anybody. I had no in.
Sure.
And so I felt like I had to work my tail off for it. And for whatever reason, Nev took a shine to me and he encouraged me and mentored me and helped in so many ways. And I remember, John, like it's yesterday. I can't believe it's 30 years.
Yeah.
My first on-air sportscast at Channel 5 came when Nev had to take leave for these aggressive chemotherapy treatments. So I was going in to do the 11 o'clock show. I got there like right after the 6 had ended. And there's a note for me at my desk. And I open it up and it's from Nev, typed on the typewriter. And he said, here's some things to think about tonight. Here's some big stories that may be happening. And at the bottom, he said, no one has given you this opportunity. You've earned it.
Wow.
Do your best. And, I can get emotional now 30 years later thinking about what that meant to me as a kid at that time from this man whose face staring down death. But he took the time to encourage me and say, hey, kid, you've earned this. So go get him. And I could never articulate all the things that he meant to me, and not just now. So many good people in the business. Doug Deacon taught me so much by saying so little. He would just nudge me once in a while and say, "Look, watch, use your eyes, see what's going on the practice field. Who's walking off? What coach is talking to who?" And he was a tremendous influence and mentor. They're just, again, I could go on and on. So many good people that I came across that encouraged me. And that's the wonderful part about our business.
Yeah, there's so many great people that have been in my career, and I cherish each and every one of them. And the people I work with, just a phenomenal business. People are great. Tough hours, a lot of demand away from the family. All that stuff. You're on the road. You're in a hotel room in Baltimore, Maryland right now talking to me. Let's take a quick break here. on the Guardians of the Land MLB podcast with Matt Underwood. And we'll get back to Matt in just a second. Stay right there.
What's up, everyone? I'm Holly Wetzel.
And I'm Tybus Powell.
And we are your hosts of the Orange is Oranger, a Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network. We give you all the dog pound coverage that you'll need to get you through the regular season, hopeful postseason, and I'd say off-season, Tybus, but is there really ever an off-season for this team?
Thankfully for our podcast, Holly, there really never is when it comes to the Cleveland Browns. Don't miss our breakdown of each week's matchup, game recaps, and any and all news out of Berea to feed your Browns appetite. As we know, Holly, dogs gotta eat.
Yes, they do. So hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode of the Orange is Oranger, Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, it's Sam Amico from Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Be sure to give us a listen for all your Cleveland Cavaliers recaps, analysis, breakdowns, draft talk, free agency. The list goes on and on. Give us a listen, Cavs on the Break NBA podcast.
Matt Underwood with us on the podcast. So happy that you have the time here as you're getting ready for another game. The Guardians have been struggling a bit. I remember 2 weeks ago sitting down and chatting with Sandy Alomar, and we thought they won a couple of games that weekend and thought, okay, they're kind of getting out of here, but they're still struggling. Won 2 in a row. Matty, just what's it been like this year? And being in the division they're in, they're certainly not out of it by any stretch of the imagination, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, they won 3 out of 4. And there are baby steps. I think, John, the one thing that I think about as far as this season is concerned is something that Rick Manning told me a long time ago. Every year is different, and the great players, of which there are very few, like Jose Ramirez, they do it year in and year out. He said, the rest of us, you're fighting for your life. You're trying to hold on. And so to think that a young player like Andres Gimenez is going to hit 300 every year and be a tremendous player every single year, it's just not realistic. So the struggles he's going through are the struggles that a lot of players go through. And you have to remember also that, like Will Brennan, for example, he had a flub the other day in a game in Cleveland. And I could tell after the game, he felt lower than low. And he comes back the next day in Baltimore and rips, 2 doubles and gets another base hit, goes 3 for 4, playing like his pants are on fire. That's great. That's encouraging to see because people forget Will didn't get called up till the last 2 weeks of the season a year ago. So he's experiencing a lot of things for the very first time, the ups, the downs, trying to find that level of consistency. And so it's been frustrating because we have such high expectations for this team based on what they did last year. But maybe our expectations just weren't realistic because they are still the youngest team in baseball. And so they are still dealing with those growing pains. But the talent's there. And the final product is far from revealed. And I still think there's a chance for this team to make a run. They're in the right division, as you pointed out. And we got 4 big games coming up in Minnesota. And we're going to see the Twins a few more times the rest of the way. So there's still plenty of baseball for them to get back to where they want to be.
Yeah, Matt, you mentioned, and as Rick Manning so aptly pointed it out, that every year is different. And then you also mentioned about, the expectations somewhat at times be a little bit unrealistic, but yet expectations are what they are. What do you think was the story behind Oscar? Just a case of a lot put on his plate, or again, the Andres Gimenez thing? We just can't expect that to be 7 years in a row, making clutch hits and being this media star that Mr. SpongeBob was last year.
Well, I think, John, he may have simply been a victim of circumstances. He started the season in a platoon role.
Yeah,
it's difficult for a young player to share time, not get every day at bats. I think we know from last year, Oscar can be a very aggressive hitter. Pitchers saw that from last year in the playoffs. They're not going to throw strikes until they have to. And so it was, he had a tough time maybe recognizing that. And he was trying to hit everything. That's a tough way to succeed. And so I think that he became a victim of circumstances because they wanted to see Gabriel Arias. And he can't play on the infield because those positions are kind of locked up. Jose's going to play every day at third.
Yep.
Rosario's going to be shortstop. Jimenez. So right field. Well, you've already got Brennan out there. You've already got Oscar out there. So Oscar ended up being the odd man out for now. I don't think by any stretch of the imagination the organization has given up on him. I think we'll see him again at some point. But right now they want to see what Arias can do. And man, the other day when he played third base, whew, you saw the arm, you saw the range. I mean, this kid is a very good defender. He's learned right field at the big league level, which is very difficult to do. And he's done okay out there. I don't think he's, cost you anything by any stretch of the imagination, but he's still learning that position. And if they can make him a serviceable right fielder, it enables them to get his bat in the lineup, which they think will play with experience at this level.
Yes. Now, we know we've seen in year two, Quan has had more strikeouts, but yet I think he's adjusting as this year is going on. What are your impressions of what Stephen Kwan, who was one of the almost rookie of the year candidates, if you will, last year, transitioning to this year about 60 games into your schedule?
Yeah. And, he won a Gold Glove last year. I think his defense has been terrific. I think offensively, look, teams get a book on you. Pitchers see you. They know how they're going to attack him. And then he's done a nice job of trying to adjust. They know that the high fastball is a tough pitch for him, but he's able to foul that pitch off and keep himself alive. And then if they make a mistake, he can put it in play and a lot of hits the other way. He's done a very good job, in my opinion, in the leadoff spot, trying to set the table.
Yeah.
And I think that, it's some of it's a combination of, like maybe when he's hit, then Rosario's been cold and hasn't been able to keep that in and keep that momentum going. And then when Kwani's maybe not gone on base, then Rosario's gotten hot. They haven't been hot together. And last year, you remember when they took off, Kwan was on, Rosario was then on. And now you got Jose in the middle of the order coming up behind him. You can't walk him when there's guys on base. And that's when this offense is at its best. Kind of like the rally the other day against Baltimore.
Yeah.
Well, you get Kwan on. Now you have to pitch to Ramirez, and then he can do some damage.
Yeah, it's really been fun to see. I mean, first of all, because you see Stephen Kwan each and every day, he just appears to be such a kid who's got it together upstairs and has that mental makeup to be a true pro and will be one for a long time. And then, we're seeing the performance out on the field. And there's more of those types of individuals, and I'm making a very bad segue to your young pitchers, both Tanner and also Logan Allen, Tanner Bibee and Logan Allen. Why is this organization so good at finding these kids? What's the secret sauce? How has this been able to be accomplished? It seems like every time you turn around, there's a Bieber coming along, or a Bibee, or a Logan Allen. What's the deal with this organization?
And we haven't seen the best one yet, and that's Gavin Williams.
Yeah, right.
This kid he's a horse, and I'm excited when he gets the opportunity to get called up because all the reports are electric fastball, big bodied guy, and so he's still in the pipeline. But to your point, John, I don't know that it could be easily summed up as to why they've had the success they've had. I think there are a lot of people that have a hand in it at various points in players' development stages. I think they've got a great pitching coach at the big league level in Carl Willis.
Yep.
Had tremendous development guys, from Ruben Niebla, who's moved on to San Diego, to Brian Sweeney, who's now with Kansas City. They just have had very good mentors for these kids along the way. I think what has been most impressive, because I truly don't know the answer to that question. Tito doesn't either. If they did, they'd bottle it and they'd sell it and we'd all be rich and retired. But what has been impressive is that when we see pitchers called up, they don't look scared. They don't look lost. They don't look overwhelmed. They look like, here we go. Boom, boom. Yeah. Here's a breaking ball. Here's a changeup. They seem to be fully developed. They're not learning up here, although they are. Every day is a learning experience at the major league level. But when they get here, they're ready. They're ready to compete and help the team win. And that's what Bibee's done. That's what Logan Allen has done. That's what Tristan did when he first came up, what Bieber did, what Aaron Savali did. I mean, we can go on and on. How many of these guys they called up, they don't look overwhelmed. I mean, even Hunter Gaddis, he's had his ups and downs, but his last couple of starts, man, he's been really tough as well. So it's always encouraging to know that despite the offensive struggles, those guys are going to keep. How many one-run games can a team, play? And they're 3-2, they're 4-3. These are low-scoring games because that pitching always gives you a chance.
It really does. It's really been fun to see the development and the mental aspect that you alluded to. They come up here, they don't seem to be, gasping for air, worried about how they're performed. They just get on the rubber and do their thing. And Bybee, I just read the little piece that Zach Meisel wrote in The Athletic, where he was breaking down pitches that he was throwing to, just breaking down the mental aspect. And I thought, wow, this kid's playing chess already. And, and he's a major leaguer only like a month or so. And he just seems like he knows how to play the chess that there is when you're facing a batter and you're setting him up with one type of pitch to go for another one. I think it's impressive.
Yeah, it is impressive. And I think there are, if you have, I remember when CC Sabathia made his major league debut, I think he threw 17 consecutive fastballs to start the game. And,
wow.
He had such God-given ability that CC literally just took the ball and said, "You can't hit it." And he
Smoke
did that all the way through the level. And then he got to the big leagues and realized, oh, these guys are pretty good. Now I've got to learn how to, refine my secondary pitches and figure out how to throw a changeup and really carve that breaking ball on the outside corner. And so guys that don't have that 97, 98 Bartolo Colon style fastball,
yes,
got to learn that earlier. And so I think Bybee, Logan Allen, Savali, those guys, when they get here, or even Shane Bieber, they already had to learn how to pitch because they didn't have the lightning bolt, power fastball. And so that's part of it too. The cerebral side of it. We were talking on the air the other night about Ted Williams' great book, The Science of Hitting, and how, as a hitter, you're thinking with that pitcher. The last time I faced this guy, he started me with a breaking ball, and then I took the fastball. He's going to think that I'm not looking for that. Well, this time I am looking for it. And so if he smokes that pitch, now the pitcher's going, all right, okay. Now I have to make the adjustment the next time I face you, remembering that sequence. And these guys are really good at remembering sequences of pitches in at-bats. And it could be months down the road. They face that guy. Oh, I remember the last time I faced him in May in Cleveland. This is what he did to me. So now I'm going to be ready for it.
Yeah. It's really cool to see that progression and that mental aspect of the game is just so remarkable. And maybe I can segue to my next question using the mental thing as well. Our buddy Clase, 16 saves, you can't deny those, but we've seen some of those blown saves. Was it just the rule changes that affected him, or is it that, people have figured him out? What are some of the aspects? And you start to see him starting to climb out a little bit of some of his earlier funk, the thing that he was dealing with?
Yeah, I think part of it is, again, going back to what we started with, every year is different. He was so dominant last year. It's hard to expect he's going to come back and be that. There's only one Mariano Rivera, right? That guy was on another planet compared to everybody else, but he's the standard, right? And so everybody's striving to be as good as he was. It's just maybe not realistic again to think that we're going to see. Now, Clase throws 100 miles an hour, 99, 98, and that fastball is not straight. It's cutting at the last possible second for the hitter. So it's not easy to hit. But I think the one thing that hitters have understood when you face Clase, he's not going to try to trick you. You're going to get a pitch in the strike zone to hit because he doesn't throw. He's not wild. He throws a ton of strikes. He's competing with every single pitch. And so you don't see a guy with a ton of strikeouts because hitters are going up there as like, if I get one in the zone, I'm swinging because I'm not getting buried by this guy. So they put the ball in play a lot. Sometimes those balls find holes. If he was giving up doubles and home run, you might be concerned. He's giving up base hits that find holes, and that's going to happen from time to time. But I think he's still been good. He's been used a lot. That's something to keep an eye on because we've played so many one-run games. He leads the league in appearances. He also leads the league in saves. but they've had to lean on him a lot because of the situation they've been in.
Yeah, he'd come up. Rare was the time he's gone in with a 3-run lead.
Right.
This is not happening this year. The rule changes, Matt. How has it been for you? And then how do you believe it's affected the game of baseball? Good, bad, indifferent towards the rule changes, and what their hope was is to get more excitement, get fans in the ballparks, and not have these marathon 3.5-hour games.
I think that my own opinion is I like the way the game is being played right now. I think what's done, John, for me, they've cut the fat out, right? Nobody pays money. Nobody tunes in to watch a guy, all this nonsense between every single pitch. Nobody wants to see a pitcher out there, taking forever. You want to see action. And so we've sped up the in-between time. I think, like anything, there are adjustments to be made early in the season. There were adjustments for both pitcher and hitter. We'll continue to see some of those little hiccups along the way, but for the most part, I think the players have adjusted. I think it's been great. For me, it makes the games it's quicker. I mean, you don't have as much time to tell a story, to pontificate. You've got to kind of stick to the action because it's happening very rapidly. And I think that's a good thing.
I just keep going back to Will Ferrell doing Harry Carey, and just, if Harry Carey tried to do Major League Baseball now, it would probably be an unmitigated disaster, or it'd be so hilarious that you couldn't stop listening to it. It'd be like driving by a wreck on the freeway. You just couldn't take your eyes away from it. But,
you could almost imagine, hey, Staldy, what did that last guy do? I forget. Did he strike out? Did he count? It actually happened to Rick and I the other day, John. We were in Cleveland. Fly ball hit right field. Arias is out there. He's camped under it. As the ball goes in his glove, we simultaneously look down to our scorecards to write down to 9.
Yeah.
And then I look up and the guy standing on second base. I look at Rick. He's looking at me like, what happened? We had no idea. Why is that guy standing on second base? I thought he caught the ball. And now everybody in the truck is like panicked because nobody knows exactly what just happened. Well, he caught it. And then when he went to throw it, it fell out of his glove. And
oh, my God.
Thank goodness, because we're like, but neither one of us saw it because we both looked down to write it on our card at the exact same time. But that can sometimes happen when, it's a live event.
Yeah. I remember being at the game last week. I think it was their Wednesday, and that would have been a 6-0, loss to the White Sox on that Wednesday afternoon matinee affair. And it was like 2 hours and 14 minutes or something like that. And we just saw the game. I mean, it was kind of scrunched down, it's like putting your food in the compactor, and it's all kind of scrunched there for you. And that game would have been a 3-hour affair probably last year. So that's kind of good to see. To the division, I mentioned before, fortunate to be in the division. Do you see this just Guardians and Twins down in the, running up into the end of September, or what?
I don't see anybody in the division running away with it. So that's the good thing, when you're still struggling to kind of find your footing. That's the saving grace. If you're in the East right now, you're buried. You're almost almost completely out of it if you're Cleveland with the record they have right now. But Minnesota, they haven't been able to put together a run. If anybody could win 8 out of 10 and get hot, they could put a little distance between themselves and the rest of the pack. I give the Tigers a lot of credit. I don't think anybody saw Detroit even remotely contending, and here they are. They're right on the Twins' heels. I think they're a game back, maybe game and a half, 2 games back. So they've played well. The White Sox are a huge disappointment because I think they felt like they had the pieces to at least contend. And even though they came to Cleveland and won the series recently, they just have not been able to put anything together consistently. I feel bad for Matt Cotaro in Kansas City. He was a great coach in Cleveland. That's a rebuilding process, and they're going to take their lumps, and they have taken their lumps. But, I think overall, you would assume that Cleveland and Minnesota are going to be the 2 teams that will duke it out to the bitter end this year.
Yeah.
You just hope that, you just hope that the bottom doesn't fall out. That I think that's the key. You just don't want to get into a situation where, you lose 10 in a row and now you put yourself really behind the 8 ball. I think that, again, the pitching's good enough. If the offense, continues to move forward and they can improve, then I think that they can still contend and be in this race throughout the summer.
Matty, I appreciate it so much you stopping by here to chat with me. Great to hear the early play-by-play, if you will, of your career, how you got your breaks and how you took advantage of them. Always been good buds with you and respect your work. And I know you're living the dream, as you said before, and that's all well and good. So tremendous guest. Thanks so much. Hopefully we can do this again some other time.
Honored that you asked me to be here, John. Always a pleasure to catch up with you, and I've appreciated your friendship and your support and encouragement over the years. Thank you.
It is my pleasure. He is Matt Underwood, the television voice of your Cleveland Guardians, right here on the podcast that's devoted to your Cleveland Guardians, the Guardians of the Land MLB podcast, right here on the Press Play Podcast Network. A couple of items to clean up here as we close out the show. And then, of course, we'll be setting you up for our next adventure with you here on these podcast airwaves. You, of course, have the team in Baltimore for 2 more games. They've got a game tonight. We're taping this midday on the 30th, Tuesday the 30th. And then they will have a 3:00 affair on Wednesday afternoon. Then go to Minnesota, as Matt alluded. That's a 4-game series, Thursday through Monday, then back home the following Tuesday, 1 week from today. They will open up a 3-game homestand against the Red Sox, then 3 games against the Houston Astros. So it'll be fun to keep tabs and see how they are going. Playing pretty decent ball over the weekend. Let's see if they can continue their ways against the Orioles in the next 2 games in this affair. And thank you very much for listening to this edition of the podcast. Please be sure to check out all the other podcasts on the Press Play Podcast Network. For the great Mr. Matt Underwood, for our producer, Michael, who spins the dials and does a great job at his location down south, thank you so very much for listening. We'll catch you the next time on the Guardians of the Land MLB Podcast. I'm your host, John Telich, and we'll see you the next time around. Thanks for listening.